Enchanted Care Learning Center is ready to welcome your child into the classroom with a curriculum that challenges and inspires students, a daily routine that helps them thrive, plenty of time to play with friends, and most important, enhanced safety measures to keep everybody safe. Preschool is possible at Enchanted Care. Contact us today to schedule an open house appointment on Saturday, January 23rd, or schedule a virtual information session. Visit enchantedcare.com to find a preschool near you.
You know, Jung says in a nutshell, the first half of life is often defined by the ego and achievement and kind of establishing oneself in relation to others. And the second half of life, many people can experience a shift where it's kind of more about impact.
Before we get into the episode, I wanted to tell you a quick story. A few weeks ago, we painted our house, and my wife left it up to me to choose the colors. And I was like, no problem. This is going to be easy. I'm just going to walk into Home Depot and choose the color. And, if you've ever seen that wall that they have all the color swatches, it's like 1 million different colors. It's pretty overwhelming. As soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, I made a mistake. I needed to have a plan going into this. Sometimes it can be like that, talking to these adventurers that have done so much. When you talk to someone like Travis and Mark, their life is so filled and so revolves around adventure. It can honestly be hard to choose a place to start. So especially, having them both on the show together, that essentially doubles the number of experiences that we could talk about. But we decided to focus on a few, one being the book that Travis wrote called The Ultra Mindset, an Endurance Champion's 8 Core Principles for Success in Business, Sports, and Life. That's a book that he wrote, of course. You can find it anywhere, but I encourage you to get it at travismacy.com. And then also their recent Eco Challenge, which is a multi-day, week and a half long adventure race that involves a number of different sports, all in Fiji. And it was actually made into a documentary that's on Amazon called The World's Toughest Race, Eco Challenge Fiji. And it was also hosted by Bear Grylls, so that's pretty cool. But they were a team that was in that race and did pretty well, but it follows their story along with, a lot of other teams competing. But anyway, to kind of draw it all the way back, Mark is the one who got started in adventure racing back in the 90s, competing in the very first Eco Challenge, which pretty much changed his life. And then as Travis saw his dad, competing in this stuff, it obviously shaped him, and they have gone to do just honestly more than I can even list in this intro. So I encourage you to follow them, check them out. They have a lot of interesting things that they're always doing, raising support for Alzheimer's foundations, which if you don't know, Mark was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so we talk about that as well. But also, I do want to mention Travis is coming out with a podcast soon, and it's going to be called The Travis Macy Show. And I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be about, but he's filled with wisdom, filled with tons of experiences, and if he is able to share any of that on the show, it's going to be definitely a worthwhile listen. But I encourage you to check that out as well. Follow them both on Instagram and just be inspired by what they're doing. They're really humble, really just down-to-earth guys that have done some pretty incredible things. So, and also thank you, Matt Shibanoff, for connecting the two of us. Travis tells a little story about you at the very end of the episode, and it sounds like you might have a story to tell on this show too. Something about breaking your arm and running 100 miles at the end of a bike ride. Crazy. But anyway, thanks again, Matt, and thanks again to everyone that is now a new listener. If you have time or you want to, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever you're listening to. It helps a ton. Enjoy the episode. Travis and Mark Macy. Hey, y'all. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Mason. Good to be here with you. We're coming in from Colorado. I'm in Salida, and Dad's in Evergreen.
Yeah, this is Mark Macy. I'm glad to see you and glad to be on your show, and look forward to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you guys are obviously incredibly well known for your adventures and for your adventure racing. I assume that starts with you, Mark. So if you don't mind, I'd love to hear like what got you into that world, because it was, many years ago when you were doing this stuff, and probably have seen so much change over the years. Do you remember or recall where this started for you, what you grew up doing, and how you got into adventure racing?
I basically started as an athlete of some sort long time ago when I was a rock climber, and I played baseball and all that kind of stuff. And one day I decided I was going to do a marathon. It was my first day running. I'd never run before that. Thought about it, but so I did the Mayor's Cup Marathon in Denver, and I got killed. I told my wife, if I'm not done with the race, come and get me after 5 hours. And, she came to get me, and I still wasn't done. And so it took me over 5 hours to do it. And that was day one of running for me, and didn't know anything about it, and thought, this is pretty stupid. I'm going back to rock climbing. But for some reason, I went back to, running. And then, of some significance, I decided that I was going to do an Ironman triathlon, and really didn't know much about it. I saw Julie Moss take a dive that's pretty famous in the Ironman world. And so I thought, well, I'll give that a go. See if I can do that. And, after maybe a year of training, I actually did do the Ironman. In those days, it was a little bit easier to get into the race than it is now. And so I did the Ironman, and then one night I was in Evergreen, and there was a misty night, and I was watching the Leadman, not the Leadman,
Leadville 100, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excuse me. I do have Alzheimer's. I didn't tell you that yet. I should have told you. So every now and then I kind of lose my words and stuff. So if you could give me a little bit of break, that'd be excellent. But
no problem.
But getting back to the Leadville 100, I was watching it on TV, and I thought, I'm in a misty night in the mountains, and I thought, man, you know what? I think I can do that. So, sometime later, I went to Leadville and signed up. That my first ultra race. Signed up, and been at it ever since. And things were pretty simple in the olden days. You just decide you're going to do something, and you go do it, and nobody cares. And so that's how I got into those events. And then I think in 1960 something, I may be wrong about that, but Marshall Ulrich, yes, he's one of the best ultra runners and triathletes and stuff in the world. And he asked me if I wanted to do this race. Didn't know anything about it, and we joined this race, and it was it made no sense whatsoever that we were gonna become adventure racers. But that was, I don't know how many years ago that was, 20 years ago or something, and 9 or 10.
I think that was probably that was like the first Eco Challenge in '95, right, Dad?
Yeah.
And that was kind of, when I started getting excited about it. So that was, mid '90s. I was 12 years old, and they started putting those on TV that was like '95 through 2002 was the original eco challenges, which maybe some people might remember. They were, obviously it was before internet, but they were on, Discovery Channel and USA Network, and fairly successful, produced by Mark Burnett, who then went on to do Survivor and The Apprentice and all the other reality stuff. And those, I think Burnett moved on to Survivor and his other productions like after 2002. So the Eco Challenge itself sort of fizzled out, but adventure racing continued, just sort of out of the eye of the typical American TV viewer. And Dad continued to do races. He did a couple Prima Quest races, and as I finished college in 2005, I really got into the sport as well, and was able to race around the world and do all these events in China and South America and Europe and all kinds of places that were neat big races, kind of like the one that maybe people saw recently on Amazon Prime. But they just weren't on TV, and they didn't have all the hype and everything, and didn't have the backing of an Amazon or anything like that. But they were still cool races, and at times we had good sponsorship and prize money and that sort of stuff. And finally, the world's toughest race, which was the reiteration of the Eco Challenge, came back in 2019, and Dad and I got to do that together, and we had a blast, huh, Dad?
Yep. It was great.
Tell us about what was that race for people that don't know anything about it. Could you just outline what you did?
Yep.
And then I want to hear some stories from it because it sounded incredible.
Yeah, so it's if people are interested, again, it's on Amazon Prime. It's called the world's toughest race. But in a nutshell, for those who are unfamiliar with the sport of adventure racing, it's a very dynamic competition in which typically a co-ed team of 4 is traveling together for, some of the races are shorter, and shorter for adventure racing would be like 6 hours or 12 hours or 24 hours. And then the bigger races, kind of like this one, it's called an expedition adventure race, and for that you're probably talking somewhere between 5 and 10 days, depending on the race and depending on are you going for the win, or are you just trying to make it through. And the going for the win is kind of what I've done in the past in a lot of the adventure races, and this time it was more of let's just have a good time and enjoy ourselves out there and do what we can, and we were really psyched to do that. So what are you doing? Well, you're doing a wide variety of sports. You're trekking, you're mountain biking, you're doing some sort of paddling, usually many kinds of paddling. So there could be rafting, there could be kayaking, there could be canoeing. There's almost always some sort of fixed ropes. So, you get to a cliff or a crag or a canyon or whatever, and they have the ropes set up, and then you're ascending the ropes and rappelling and doing Tyrolean traverses and, just all kinds of various things on the ropes. And then you're also navigating the whole time with map and compass. So, most endurance races, whether it's an ultra run or a triathlon, it's a marked course. And in this case, the course is literally a sheet of paper with map coordinates on it, and then you plot those points on the map and you find your way using a map and compass. No GPS, no cell phones, none of these, Google Earth or Onyx or these programs that we use to, navigate around these days. There's none of that. And that's a big piece of it is the navigation itself. And then you're also racing around the clock. So the managing sleep deprivation, that becomes a big piece of it. And, typically like the teams that are trying to win, they're probably doing somewhere between, maybe 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep per night for days on end, and continuing to race at a very high level. So it's definitely a pretty dynamic sport. And, I think Dad and I are a little biased, but we think it makes for good TV. There's always drama. There's always, just good stories that emerge in addition to the competition itself, which is, these are great athletes with a ton of experience, really racing at a very high level.
Unbelievable. I'm sure it's some great father-son bonding too. Were there any other teams out there that were, father-son or siblings or related?
Yeah, there's a bunch, and if for those who watch the coverage, I mean, there's some great stories, but there were a couple other father-son teams I can think of. There was one, let's see, there was a team with a dad with his two daughters who I think were maybe in their 20s. And there was a team of two guys, two adult men who are friends with each of them had one kid in the race. And these were those youngsters, I think one of them was 18 and one was 19. And that was a fantastic story. We ended up being around those guys quite a bit during the race, and they were able to finish. It can be a family thing. And I think in this case, the event production had the challenge of let's make a race that's hard enough to be a legitimate race, for these top teams that, have been winning the adventure racing world championship and that kind of thing, for decades. It's got to be hard enough that it's going to take them 5 or 6 days, but it's got to be easy enough that, some of the teams with less experience and good stories that they may want to show on TV, that they can make it within the 11-day cutoff. And that's actually pretty hard to do, because if it's taking the top teams in the world 5 days, it's going to be very hard for less experienced athletes to do in 10 or 11 days.
Absolutely. Mark, I'd love to ask you a question. This was your 25th year of adventure racing. Could you tell us a little bit about how has adventure racing changed over the years, or from the first iterations of the Eco Challenge until the most recent one? Does it just seem like a totally different sport, and do the same principles hold true that were getting you through the races way back then?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the race has become easier. Or I'm sorry, I got it backwards. The race is much more difficult now than it used to be. It was pretty simple back in the 1900s, whatever it was when I first started. It started out in Moab, Utah, and none of us knew what was going on. And I remember Marshall Ulrich and I were kind of racing together, and we would navigate by standing up on spires, looking for people,
wow.
trying to find where people in the race are, so we could get back onto it. We got dropped from it, and we were trying to get back. And certainly, people these days at the Eco Challenge aren't climbing up, rock spires trying to find the race. So as years progressed, I raced for many years with Marshall, as I've mentioned before, and the name of our team was Stray Dogs, and we traveled the world together, and man, we just had a great time. And then, once I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was unclear what would happen to me in the Eco Challenge race, and I didn't know if it was something that I should do or shouldn't do, and when ultimately we just decided, this is what I do, and I've been doing it forever, and Travis and I decided to put together a team and see what happens, and so we took our request, if you will, to allow me to race to the Eco Challenge people. And I'd known them for many, many years, Mark Burnett and all the folks who run Eco Challenge allowed me to race. And And I assume I used to be a trial lawyer, and I assume they must have got their lawyers involved because, that's a real issue whether or not somebody's going to make it, if I'm going to make it or not. And so in any event, they let me in the race, and our team joined, and we took off, and it was just a great time, with Travis and our teammates, and one of the best events of my life, and I'll always cherish it. And like I said, I'll cherish it forever.
It's awesome.
And I'll add there, Dad, regarding sort of, does the race change over time? Like, yes, it does. No, it doesn't. Interestingly, some of the, if you're a fan of the older eco challenges, from back in the day, you'll see many of the same athletes, even some of the same top teams, maybe people who were in their 20s or 30s in the 90s, and now here they are in their 40s or 50s, and they're still winning these long races. And I think that's a neat thing, that these races are, they're so long that it becomes less about your high end speed, and it's more about perseverance and experience and working as a team, and really just being resilient and being able to roll with the punches. And those are the same things that, that got people through those early eco challenges, like whether it was Moab, Utah, or they did one in Argentina, they did one in New Zealand, Morocco, Australia. Let's see, what else am I? Borneo, Fiji. The 2002 race was in Fiji, and so Dad and all his buddies, they finished that race in Fiji, and they promised they'd never go back to the jungle in Fiji, and, and then there they were, and I didn't do that one. I was in college at that time, but as it turns out, all three of my teammates for this 2019 race, which again is Dad and our good friends Danelle Balangi and Shane Siegel, they all did that 2002 race. So they had all been to Fiji before, and they knew what they were getting into. And I was, I guess, maybe a little more naive, but still pretty excited to get out there and see what it was like.
That's awesome.
I had actually promised myself that I would never go back to Fiji in my life because it's just a brutal place, a very, very difficult place to race through. When it was determined that there was going to be another eco challenge, and Mike Closer told me it was going to be in Fiji, and you're not going to go to Fiji, are you? And he said, no, I'm not going either. And all of us said we weren't going to go, but when the time comes, and all the adventure racers get the call, and no matter where it is and no matter what it is, everybody goes, and that's what happened. And it turns out, Fiji is, if you ever go there and you see the villages and the people, and they're the greatest people on the planet almost. They help you. They feed you at night if you want. They'll give you the clothes off their back if you need them. So going back to Fiji was well worth it. And next time there's a race in Fiji, I don't know if I'll be able to do it when that occurs, but if possible, I'm going to go back there someday. So,
well, it sounds like Fiji redeemed itself to you, and you were able to have a good experience there. Y'all weren't hanging out on the beach necessarily, but you got to experience a good side of Fiji that not a lot of people get to, honestly. So, Travis, you mentioned something before, just talking about that endurance mindset and that being able to, people that are a little bit older being able to just outdo some of these younger athletes. Did you, growing up under your father's, just everything he was doing, did you adopt that mindset early?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mason. And I think I was, and I definitely talked about that a bit in my book, The Ultra Mindset, kind of these mindset ideas that come from endurance racing and can help you in the races, but maybe help you in other areas of life as well. And I would say it's true that for me, it wasn't Dad pushing me into these things, or you must become an endurance athlete, or you should, or anything like that. But it was more of just having exposure to it. So when you're a kid and you see people out running 100 miles in Leadville, Colorado, or doing the Badwater Ultra Marathon, or doing the Eco Challenge on TV, it becomes a little more normal. And in so many things in life, whether it's adventure racing, or dealing with the pandemic, or the uncertainty within the Alzheimer's journey, so many of these things, it's just a question of how do you handle uncertainty? How do you roll with the punches? What are the stories that you tell yourself? How much do you believe in yourself and your family and your team to get through it? So yeah, I think those were things that I just kind of by chance did have some more exposure to as a kid, and I was lucky, I guess you could say, to be able to become a pretty competitive endurance athlete, in my 20s and 30s. And I guess now maybe I'm a little the opposite. I'm racing less now that I'm in my late 30s, and kind of a little more family time and more unstructured adventure, whether that's doing things around my house here in Salida, or getting into other endurance activities like backcountry skiing and hunting, and travel and that kind of stuff. So I still like racing, and I'm still doing a bit here and there. And obviously that Eco Challenge was a huge push and time consumer there for 1 year. But I'm definitely doing less racing than I used to, which at this point is okay. And who knows? Maybe I'll get back into doing more sometime in the future. I don't know.
Could you both share maybe a story of where being endurance and being ultra athletes helped you in another aspect of life, maybe just the mindset or the principles in place? Because I'm always curious as to how adventure helps us live our lives better. And, with talking to two legends right here together, I'd love to learn from you.
I'll tell you what, as far as I'm concerned, the best part of everything I've done as an athlete is that I've been granted the right to travel all over the world. I've been places that, I never thought I would get to. I've been a lot of places nobody's, hardly anybody goes to. And I know for a fact that had it not been for adventure racing, I wouldn't have seen all these places. I wouldn't have been to Fiji twice. Who goes to Fiji twice? And who goes to the Sahara Desert twice in races? No, that's 3 times in the Sahara Desert, that's the coolest place you can go to on the planet is the Sahara Desert. And if you haven't been there sometime, I recommend it. You ought to go. It's really a neat place, and I'll never forget those places, and I'll never forget the friends that I've made, and I'll never forget the other people that I raced against, but we're really friends. And I'll tell you what, I don't know that I'll ever get to do a race like, the Eco Challenge if it comes up, but that's mainly because I probably lack the capability to hold my own with my, teammates, but, I'm still consider myself to be an athlete, and I'm pretty fit and pretty strong. And, any small adventure races come up, I'm going, that's for sure. So life's been great, and I'm happy with everything that I've done. And, you talk about, I just can't even remember what the disease is that I have. That's
Alzheimer's.
It's not important.
Maybe a good thing to forget about.
Yeah, I could have done without the Alzheimer's, but the rest of it's been good.
Yep. Yeah, I'll add there, Mason, as far as like what are other areas of life where maybe these things that, whether it's from adventure racing or ultra running, or maybe things that are a little more common, going out for your hike or run, or like in Colorado, a big thing is to hike a 14er, and that's a big challenge. That's something that's very hard for a lot of people, and they should be very proud of achieving. I think you can learn a lot from that. I know in my own life, some examples are with parenting. There's moments as a parent where you're doing something really important that's a big thing in your life and that you're wholly committed to, but it's still very challenging. When you have young kids, you're staying up all night and you're attending to their needs all the time. And then as kids get older, there's just different wonders and challenges at every age. And I think that you learn again by going out and doing your race or your hike, or running your 10K race. Like, you just learn that suffering is okay and there's a value to it, and sometimes the suffering that you take on by choice, in a training or a race or an adventure, I think that's building a well of resilience for suffering that comes not by choice. One of Dad's sayings over the years was always, "It's good mental training," and that's the idea that you're doing something tough, and you're training mentally for the harder things that come later on, because we all will face big challenges in life that are not by choice. And maybe that's a medical diagnosis. Maybe it's challenges, within your family or relationships. Maybe I know for me, some of the adversity I faced is some depression and anxiety along the way, and that's definitely been very hard at times. But it's also been something that I tell myself I'm prepared for. I've done really hard things, and I know that I can make it through this, and I believe in myself deeply to come out on the other side. So I think there's, in my opinion, everyone should get outside and do something hard that pushes their limit and comfort zone a little bit, because you are going to learn from it. And I think you're probably going to find out that you like it, more than you thought you would. And maybe for you, going out and pushing your limit in the outdoors, maybe that just means going outside when it's cold out, or going for a walk around your neighborhood in the dark. These are things that for many people feel uncomfortable. Go out and try it. And I think, I mean, I could go on and on about this mindset stuff, but one final thing I'll say is one thing I've learned is that often to move towards something that you want to move towards, fear is going to be in the way. It's often not the easy path. And if you live your life according to moving away from fear or things that you're worried about, you're probably also not going to go towards the things that you want. So I try to move more towards the things that I want, even if there's some fear and uncertainty in the way. And I know, I mean, hey, the global pandemic, like, we got some good news maybe about some vaccines coming out here sometime soon, but there's still a whole lot of uncertainty for all of us. And, it's a challenging time. It's a time that we're going to have to grapple with fear and figure things out.
We're always driving to dance lessons. So we signed up for Know Your Drive. We save money and get closer to her dancing dreams.
The daring young man on the flying trapeze.
Or maybe her singing dreams. Sign up for Know Your Drive and save up to 20%. American Family Insurance. Insure carefully, dream fearlessly.
Products not available in every state. Discount terms apply. Visit amfam.com/knowyourdrive for details. American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Enchanted Care Learning Center is ready to welcome your child into the classroom with a curriculum that challenges and inspires students, a daily routine that helps them thrive, plenty of time to play with friends, and most important, enhanced safety measures to keep everybody safe. Preschool is possible at Enchanted Care. Contact us today to schedule an open house appointment on Saturday, January 23rd, or schedule a virtual information session. Visit enchantedcare.com to find a preschool near you.
Great words of wisdom from both of you, and I think you're totally right. That's some criticism I hear with adventures sometimes. It's like, yeah, those skills aren't applicable because you chose to go out there and do that. Not everything you get to choose to do, But, I'd have to disagree. A lot of the times when I'm sitting there going through something, it is, okay, remember that time you did that? That was really hard. Yeah, you chose to be out there, but you didn't choose the circumstance that happened while you were out there necessarily. You didn't control that weather pattern or whatever it is. And it is a reservoir of inspiration that you can pull from. Let me ask you this from both of you, and I know we're kind of keeping it somewhat surface level because we find that folks with so many experiences, it's almost hard to just choose one versus an interview where it's like, I did this one adventure. We'll just talk about that adventure. You guys, it's like books and books worth of stuff. What would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions about your lifestyle and about achieving the difficult things you've done that you hear from people on the outside?
I think for a misconception I hear, or one thing I hear people say at times is, maybe they watch the Eco Challenge on TV, or, whatever, they read your book, or they see something like an ultra run, and they say things like, oh man, that's so cool. I wish I could do that, or I wish I could do something like that. Or I'd like to do that, but I'm not athletic, or things of that nature. And I think that's a misconception because really, we're normal people who, have families and, need to make ends meet. And we wake up and we put our pants on one leg at a time, just like everyone else. And I think that a misconception is when, and it happens in many areas, you see a great actor, or you see the politician, or you see the novelist, and you think, oh, that person was, bestowed from above with something special. And really, I think in pretty much every case, like, yeah, maybe there is some degree of genetic talent or predisposition to enjoy certain activities. But for the most part, people go out and they achieve success, or they make it through, or they finish the race, or whatever. They do that because they put in the time, and because they work hard. And I think that, if you want to have a lifestyle where anything, in my case, it's living outside and having activity and nature be part of your life. If you want to do that, you can figure out how to do that. It's probably not going to be easy. And, like in my case, I've had to make a decision like, okay, I'm going to be self-employed, and there's some doubts and worries about that. And, we have to pay for health insurance and, all of these barriers that are in the way. But I think you can make it work if you want to. So I think that if you're out there listening to this and you have some big idea, and I don't care if it's athletic or entrepreneurial or anything else, just a way that you want to live your life. Really, life isn't that long. You only have one shot, and if you want to figure out how to do it, you probably can. And it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be easy, but you can do it. So, yeah. In other words, there's nothing special about people. We're all just people, and you figure it out, and you persevere.
Mark, did you have anything to add to that, or did that sound pretty good to you?
Yeah, I tell you, all the stuff that I've done, and that Travis has done, and that all of our friends have done, it seems so dramatic and so difficult. And how can you go out and spend 7 days in the jungle or whatever it is, and it sounds like nobody could do it, but all of us who do in fact do it, we're no different than anybody else, other than at some point in our lives, we've decided we're going to give it a go and see what happens. And it's as simple as that, as far as I'm concerned. And I gave it a go, and Travis gave it a go, and now we've been every place we ever wanted to go to, and we had friends everywhere, and It's pretty cool.
You know, we hear it over and over again. It really is just getting out there and starting to do it. And it's not rocket science in that sense.
Mason, I think you're right. I'm kind of cutting you off, but the first step is always the hardest. You know, there's a this author. He's one of his books is called The War of Art, and the other one is called Turning Pro. I can't remember his name. Oh, Stephen Pressfield is his name.
Okay.
And what he talks about in The War of Art, he's talking about writing. You know, and he's saying it when you're a writer, there's always going to be this resistance. You know, like every time you sit down to write, there's this resistance, and there's this force like that's pulling you away from your writing or your work or your dream. And I think that's true. Like, you know, when I apply that to running, like, or training, like, you know, I wake up and you know, it's cold and dark and miserable in the morning for me, just like it is for everyone else. And there's this, even when I've done it so many times, there's this resistance, like, oh, am I going to go out there right now? Like, this sucks. Like, this is going to be miserable. And, you know, that resistance is still there. But when you push, you know, you've probably talked, you know, whatever it is you do with your business and your life and adventures, like, it's always hard to get going. You know, the first step is the hardest. And that's why, you know, you read these self-help books and they're like, put out your clothes in the morning, you know, ahead of time. And it's true. Like, I do that. I like put my running clothes in a pile so that I don't have to find them, and they're already there. Now I can just put them on and go running. So, you know, you try to chip away at that resistance, but it's always going to be there. You know, even when, you know, again, the accomplished author or, you know, the singer or the songwriter, that resistance is still there. Like, you still have to push through and make that first step day after day after day. And that's true in so many areas of life. You know, think about like a marriage or a long relationship, like the resistance pushes you to just, you know, assume the worst of your partner or just, you know, give up and not do your best. But if you keep chipping away at it and put your best foot forward, you know, you're going to do your best and things are going to work out.
Oh my gosh, that's so true, because we hear it a lot too, and I see it in my own life. It's when you get started in something, especially if it's really new to you, you tend to make a lot of mistakes at the end. It's more expensive. You're breaking things, and there's all this resistance in that sense. Like, things go wrong because you don't know what you're doing. And so there's this initial amount of like, oh my gosh, I'm starting this. But then there's also like, I remember my first bike trip ever. I had 2 flats in the first day and my rack broke. And it was like all the things that could go wrong seemed to go wrong that first day. And it's like, I can't do this every day. Every day's like this. And it wasn't. It was just, I didn't know what I was doing. But once you get into it, you're like, okay, you can avoid a lot of them, those things that prevent you from doing it in the first place. It's really interesting. Haven't really thought about it that way before.
Yeah. It's usually whatever it is, it's probably gonna take longer and be harder than you thought.
Right. That's the word of encouragement for everyone listening. It's going to be harder than you're thinking right now, and it's going to take longer. It's going to cost more.
I don't know if that's exactly. I don't know if that's encouragement, but it's true. You know, welcome to life. And when you have that attitude, sometimes, you know, one thing I tell my coaching clients fairly often is perfect is the enemy of good. You know, when you go into a scenario and all you will accept nothing but perfect, well, you know, you might never do anything. If you only do things under perfect conditions, pretty soon you're not going to do anything at all. You know, good really is good. Like that's why it's called good. Yeah. What do you think about that, Mason? I mean, you know, doing your podcast and your kind of work, you know, do you have any thoughts about that? Have you had to, you know, deal with uncertainty and just figure things out, and sometimes accepting something that's not perfect, but it's good enough?
Well, I tell you what, we release an episode every Monday and Thursday, and if I was waiting on perfection, we wouldn't be releasing any episodes.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
It is just getting it done, getting it out there. But yeah, I definitely am plagued with that sometimes in my personal life. Like,
Yep.
I'm waiting on things to be perfect or feel guilty because they're not perfect. And then at some point it reaches this breaking point that says, it is what it is. Let it go and keep pushing forward. But no, those are great words of advice. Let me ask you guys this real quick. At this stage of your life, at this stage of your careers, what or who inspires you on a daily basis to keep going?
In the long term, it's been my wife and my family and kids, grandkids. And when I was younger, my dad was a big inspiration to me. And I thought of him a couple of days ago. He was in the Battle of the Bulge, and he was one of those kind of guys who'd never said anything about having been in World War II. Never said a word to me, and I had to keep prying at him. Come on, Dad, tell me. And finally, one time, he told me he was in the Battle of the Bulge, and I said, "How come you never told me, Dad?" And he said, "Well, you never asked." And and I've kind of lived like my dad's, for all these years. I try not to say a whole lot, and you just see what happens and give it a go, and don't quit.
Yeah, I don't think I can say it any better than that. But for a lot of my racing career, there was definitely motivation from prize money or the recognition and that kind of stuff. And I think as I've grown older, things have changed a bit. This may be going down a rabbit hole, but the psychologist Carl Jung has this theory called the two halves of life, and that maybe hopefully someone listening to this has heard of this, but Jung says in a nutshell, the first half of life is often defined by the ego and achievement and kind of establishing oneself in relation to others, and the second half of life, many people can experience a shift where it's kind of more about impact and less about proving oneself, less about sort of the result, and more about making a difference with more of a a grounded purpose. And I think that I don't know, but for me, the Alzheimer's journey is definitely challenging. I mean, that's definitely stuff like that throws you for a loop, and I think I found kind of a deeper purpose and, doing things for impact, trying to help other people, finding that same inspiration from my kids, thinking about, Dad's dad, we sprinkled his ashes up on a mountain, in Evergreen, and he still inspires me, Dad. Every time I run by there, I think about Grandpa, and I think about him and all these other young guys, in 1940, whatever. They walked all the way across France with people shooting at them, sleeping on the ground every day, all winter long. And I'm like, okay, whatever the challenge I have, whether it's physical or mental or professional, it's really not that much compared to that. So, putting things in perspective and again, just trying to make a difference. And, I'll also say my own dad is still an inspiration to me. And dad showed me that, no matter what position you're in, it's never too late to help other people. And I think that's really powerful. We're also, I think Dad and I have found a new inspiration. We're trying to make a difference for other people with Alzheimer's, whether it's a person with Alzheimer's or, their spouse or their family member or, kid, like sometimes you choose to be in certain communities, like the endurance racing community, and sometimes you're thrown into a community, again, not by choice.
your community chooses you.
Yeah, exactly, or something like that. But we're trying to help people there, as we can. We've been in touch with the Alzheimer's Association. They have an event in June called The Longest Day, which is on the summer or solstice. It's kind of basically an Alzheimer's Awareness Day, fundraising events and that kind of stuff. And I don't know, we're trying to help them with something for that. Yet to be determined, but we might try to go out and do something long on that day, kind of in association with that.
Well, I tell you what, sometimes the unexpected turns can be the most rewarding. When you look back at them, I'm sure y'all have taken some wrong turns out there on those adventure races, and are happy you did in some ways.
Yeah. Some of the cliche sayings they're true. They become well-known cliches because they're actually true. And that's one of them.
Right. But where can folks find out more about you and what you're doing next?
Dad's doing some gramming, right, Dad? Instagram.
Yeah, I'm doing what?
Got him on the gram.
Dad does have an Instagram. Dad does have an Instagram page. It's at mmacy146, and I'm on there.
I keep hearing about it all the time, but I can't really find anything.
He's got a tech support team too.
Okay, there you go.
No, Dad does. Mom's pretty techie, and Dad does love hearing from people on there. With whether it's notes or whatever. And mine is at Travis Macy, and I've got a website too that you can find if you type in my name. And I wanted to give a shout out, Mason, to Athletic Brewing. I know you work with those guys too. I've really been super happy with the non-alcoholic craft beers. One of your colleagues there turned me on to it. He's a former coaching client of mine, and they're really good. So good job.
Yeah, man, that's old Matt in New York. He's a big fan of yours. Obviously, loves what you're doing, and he's he's super inspired to do it. We're going to be doing an adventure coming up here next year. Not sure what yet, but with Athletic, we'll have to tie you in, man, because it's going to be a fun time. Obviously, COVID pending, but we'll see what we can make happen, and be uncancelable. So we'll have to keep you in the loop about that.
Keep us posted. That'd be neat. Matt is an example of again, just a guy who lives and works literally in Manhattan, in New York City, and he had the dream of doing the lead man, running 100 miles, biking 100 miles, which obviously is very different from Manhattan terrain, elevation, etc. But man, he jumped in, he trained hard, and he did awesome. And he had a bad crash on the bike, and he broke. I think he broke his ribs or something. He had I shouldn't be laughing. It was a nasty crash, and then he went out and started a 100-mile run the next week with broken ribs. I mean, he literally had his arm in a sling, and went out and gave it his best shot. But what an awesome story! What a cool guy! People like that totally inspire me.
That is too cool, man. Wow. I'm gonna have to ask him a little bit more about that, because I only know a very little. So,
no, it's a good story. He needs to do an Athletic Brewing blog or something like that.
Oh my, yeah, we're gonna have to get him to write something, because I don't think he would just tell you. He's a little too humble, but well, folks, Macy's, I appreciate y'all joining us. Really appreciate what y'all are doing, being an inspiration, just helping, normal folks do incredible things. It's very inspiring. So thank you for sharing just a smidget of your story. I know there's a billion other things we could have said, but I appreciate it.
No, thanks, Mason. Really, it's been a blast. Good to meet you. Great chatting. Great questions. Good job with your podcast. I've listened to a number of them, and you're doing an awesome job and cranking out a huge volume. So way to go. Keep it up.
Like I said, it's not perfect, but we're getting it out there. All right, y'all. Have a great evening, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, have a good one, guys. See you, Dad.
All right, see y'all.
Bye.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to growing the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
"15 minutes could save you 15% or more."
Is that Shakespeare?
Nope, it's Geico.
Yeah, that's Shakespeare from one of his unpublished works. Oh, it be not for awakening. Nay, giveth thou the berries. For 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Nope, it's from Geico, because they help save people money.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but Geico got it from Shakespeare.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Enchanted Care Learning Center is ready to welcome your child into the classroom with a curriculum that challenges and inspires students, a daily routine that helps them thrive, plenty of time to play with friends, and most important, enhanced safety measures to keep everybody safe. Preschool is possible at Enchanted Care. Contact us today to schedule an open house appointment on Saturday, January 23rd, or schedule a virtual information session. Visit enchantedcare.com to find a preschool near you.